Hey, welcome back to the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge, and today we have Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief. It's a really long title. This is a 2010 film. It's 2 hours flat, 2 hours long, and it is one of the more infamous entries in the many adaptations of young adult adventure fantasy novel productions. It's okay. Harry Potter opened a floodgate when J.K. Rowling, whatever she wants to call herself, she went from pretty much nobody, starving, trying to raise her kids, to becoming a billionaire, selling and those books around the world in the millions of copies. And then, of course, Warner Brothers comes along and takes that property and goes, we're going to make movies. And I just heard they're going to be making TV shows. Going to retell the entire story with a whole new cast, but in detail, further detail than the films can do, in a series, which is something I predicted for a very long time. It's just happening a lot sooner than I thought. But what does this have to do with Percy Jackson? Well, it is another series of fantasy adventure young adult novels that's pretty much like Harry Potter, and it also has a huge Harry Potter connection, at least in the films, because, well, the guy who brought us the first two Harry Potter films, Chris Columbus, directs this one as well. So he has a feeling. He has a pretty good feeling on how to direct young adults, essentially teenagers, adults playing teenagers, in a trio, and eventually a romance is possibly in bloom between them. There's a headstrong female, a goofy, a silly best friend sidekick kind of thing, and our hero, Percy. Maybe that's short for Perseus. I don't know, but this is all based on Greek mythology. Percy is the half. Well, he's a demigod. He's half human, half god, the son of Poseidon, and he has the ability to control water or use water to heal himself and do all sorts of crazy things. So it's very magical. It's very adventure. And of course, there's a quest. It's for those who know Greek mythology, it's very much like a Herculean kind of task, a series of tasks, quests, and things like that. Hercules trials. They aren't the exact trials, but he has, in order, he basically, there's a number of MacGuffins that need to be acquired in order to get to earn something else. It's like leveling up in a video game. They have to collect these pearls, and these pearls will get them to, well, not to Hades, whatever. They're supposed to get it. They get weapons. At first, of course, he it's the hero's journey, of course, which Harry Potter is also kind of permutation of Star Wars, which is also built off the Joseph Campbell mythology. And of course, Percy Jackson doesn't necessarily borrow. That's what the hero's journey is for so many stories. It's that structure of the call, and then the rejection of the call, and then the acceptance of the call, and then overcoming all sorts of just different trials. You got to understand that Logan Lerman, who plays Percy, has similar issues, similar connections to Harry and Luke, in the sense that he lives in a very normal life. He has a stepdad. Luke had an uncle who he thought didn't understand him. His uncle Owen really understood what was going on. Harry had his aunt and uncle who took him in even though they didn't like him or want him. And in this case, Percy does have a great mom who is kind of stuck with a deadbeat husband, his stepdad, played by Joe. Joe. I'm gonna mispronounce this here. Come on, Joe. Where are you? Pantoliano. Joe Pantoliano. He was in The Matrix as well. He's been in a bunch of stuff. He's been in everything. But he is. He doesn't have a good home life, and of course he gets once he gets the call and everything is revealed, it turns out there's been a lot more godlike or demigod-like people in his life than he actually knew. Because when you start seeing people making really weird faces at him, you're like, either that's an actor that's really into their role, or they're important to what's going on here. It's a little weird that they're like, oh, here we're going to take a tour of this museum that has Greek mythology and statues everywhere, and what about, like, they all know that he's Percy. They know who he is, and they go through the motions. All the other kids are just like, oh yeah, it's just weird. I realize it's a method in which we get a lot of exposition and background on the characters and how he fits into the world, without going, okay, check this off. This is why he's in the world. This is who he is. It adds depth and explains things to the audience. And yes, it's meant to be a young adult or child audience who's going to get into this. It's just how it is. That's who the target audience is. It's not necessarily going to be adults who may have heard of Greek mythology. I'm not counting on that, but it's okay. It's also for adults who have not heard anything about Greek mythology. It's just mostly a lot of CGI characters, which surprisingly, I shouldn't be surprised. It's a 20th Century Fox production. They got the rights to this. They very much wanted a Harry Potter of their own, and didn't do that. But they definitely spent the money on it, because not just the effects are pretty solid. They've, even though this came out 13 years ago, most of the effects really hold up. But beyond that, they also spend a lot of money on actors. There's a lot of people in this. You're right. Kevin McKidd plays Poseidon. He plays his dad. We got Steve Coogan plays Hades, and you might be going, I don't know who these people are. This is not Tom Cruise or Robert Downey Jr. or they're well-known actors, and they've it's it's the kind of thing that if you see a lot of movies, you get to see these people a lot. You'll recognize a lot of these names. Brandon T. Jackson plays Grover, his best friend, who is also a nymph, something like that. He's half goat. He's a half goat. Pierce Brosnan, James Bond, is a centaur. Centaur. Am I over pronouncing all the letters in that word? Centaur. Centaur. Yeah, I don't know. Either way, you get to see James Bond as a centaur. Centaur. Okay. Sean Bean. Yes, from all those movies in which he died in, he plays Zeus. So you get the feeling he's pretty safe in this film, because he is technically the most powerful character in existence, at least in this universe. Rosario Dawson shows up in this, currently Ahsoka, and so many other roles over the years that we've enjoyed her in. I'm not going to ruin some of the other people that appear in this. There's a few little things, but I will mention that Catherine Keener plays Logan's mom, and Uma Thurman shows up as a very important character that is in this film. So yeah, there's a number of familiar faces throughout this, but so if you're into seeing well-known actors that appeared in what is essentially a dud. They made one sequel, and that is also now on Disney Plus. And now they're making a series, which I think sort of reboots it for Disney Plus. It's a Disney Plus original. So yeah, it's a whole thing, because I imagine Logan is not coming back to the role. He's kind of grown up now. He's more adult looking than he's not necessarily playing a 17-year-old. But this is beyond the standard adventure, gathering the jewels, gathering pearls basically, and making obvious references throughout Greek mythology. It's an American road trip film. They have to go from New York to Nashville to Las Vegas and then Hollywood, and then I don't know if the tourist boards help pay for this or what, but yeah, they have a bunch of different adventures. And what's really unsettling for this, where yeah, the Harry Potter films and stuff like that. I'm sorry for constantly comparing it to Harry Potter, because they're two different things. They're not meant to be, but I mean they were kind of born from the same flesh in a sense. And it's not that the film is bad at all. I just don't. You kind of know the steps they're going to go through, and there's not a whole lot of surprises. Even when the bad guy, when the lightning thief, everybody assumes, by the way, that Percy is the one who has no idea who he is in the greater realm of things. They assume that he's a lightning thief, the son of Poseidon, and Zeus is pretty mad, and there's going to be a war of the gods if Zeus's lightning bolt is not returned to him. You might have watched Thor, Love and Thunder recently. Russell Crowe had that same thing. It looked very different, but had the same lightning bolt, which is a representation of his power. Yeah. So, when eventually the bad guy is revealed, which I will not spoil for you, you kind of go, oh yeah, that makes sense. You're kind of like, oh, they introduced a character. The character's useful, but they're not in the story. They're not really mostly in the story. I mean, so yeah, if I've given it away there, then, well, yeah, you have to see it to understand. But yeah, it's this kind of movie that's it's there. It's not like I don't regret watching it. I really kind of didn't want to watch it because I knew that it had a whole lot of baggage with it, and I don't want to come into these things being negative. But hey, it was picked, so I got to watch it. The only thing that came out of this that made me kind of unsettled was the fact that casual death that happens all around throughout this film, and the kids kind of just keep moving on. And in fact, the very last act in this film, which is in the it's in the mid-credit sequence, Percy's responsible for somebody's death directly. He's chosen to make a decision. It's meant to be a funny callback, partly, and then it's also meant to be, a comeuppance. But Medusa is a character in this film. And of course, you know how Medusa works. You look upon Medusa and you are turned to stone. Her hair with snakes and everything else. If you look at her, you turn to stone. And it's not like, you cut her head off and everybody turns back to normal. Oh man, what was that? I turned to stone, I'm back now. No, you're dead. You're absolutely dead. When our heroes come upon Medusa for the first time, they discover a woman running for her life, panicked. She's like, my husband, you gotta get away from her. She's the one who's the harbinger, in a sense, telling the kids to get out of there. And if it wasn't for her, technically, they would have probably died with not knowing what they were up against. So yeah, it's and then of course she gets turned to stone, and but she's holding on to one of her characters. I gotta make sure I get her name right. Alexandra Daddario. Alexandra Daddario plays Annabeth, who is the daughter of Aphrodite. So she's holding on to Annabeth's arm when she's turned to stone, and so Annabeth's stuck in place. She can't really move because it had a pretty tight grip on her at the time. In order to free her, one of the other guys takes a sword and chops off the stone woman's hand. And I'm like, okay, well, I hope she doesn't get turned back to human form, because that's going to hurt. There's no weird forgiveness for any of this. And there's even at one point, something comes on the news that says, we got to look out for these kids that are on the run. And kind of chaos it corresponds with where they are, corresponds with a good amount of chaos here. But in order to fulfill their quest, they have to overcome certain obstacles. And one is trying to get one of the pearls from a statue of Aphrodite, and it's really tall, and Annabeth takes a little crossbow gun and shoots all the workers that are working at the museum where the statue is. No matter where they were, there was a guy on top of a ladder, cleaning the statue. It is late at night. She shoots him with the thing, and he falls off the ladder. He could have broken his neck. It's like, oh, just poof, 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 get rid of all the staff, knock them out. We didn't kill him. Oh, no, we didn't kill him. But the guy just fell off a ladder and luckily didn't land on his neck, on his head, just the wrong way. So thanks, Annabeth. You practically murdered them. But then, well, just like in the trial, the Hercules trials and things like that, the Hydra comes into play, happens to be made out of those unconscious workers, innocent workers, just cleaning the place, and the Hydra is formed, and they defeat the Hydra. You can imagine how they might defeat the Hydra. I'm not going to tell you how, but they're essentially dead, let's just say. Never mind the fact that, oh, these 6 people or 5, 6 people have lost their lives from these kids who are out. Yes, they're out to save the world, but you don't really, you know, as a viewer, they're going to win at some point. They're going to overcome every obstacle and they're going to win. The rest of the world can go screw themselves, basically. It's just, oh, random innocent people get caught in the path, they die. Okay. And so that, to me, was just a little casual, overly casual disregard for life. Whereas in the Harry Potter films, yeah, Death Eaters, they're just different people, but they were like, when Robert Pattinson dies in the 4th one, but it's a specific death. He's not just collateral damage that they just move on from. His death affects people. So and so it's just, in this one, it's just sort of like, oh, well, as long as we survive, we're going to just keep going. And everybody, bye. Yeah. So it's to me, it's a little callous. Not really my favorite aspect of the film, but what are you going to do? But yeah, I'm hoping that when the new series comes out in 2024, they can revisit this. It's a rich source material that I think can really do some good. But I think a lot of studios were just cranking out stuff with the properties they had access to try to get it out there as fast as possible so they can keep making sequels as fast as possible before their characters get too old to be in these movies. They want to crank out a trilogy at least. Not to mention, 7. When you're dealing with Harry Potter, I'm going to go back to Harry Potter again. You get them when they're like 10, 11 years old, and there's a progression between each films because each movie is a different year in their lives, and they're supposed to get older. And very often in these other films, there's no real set timeline, and they just are like, oh, suddenly the next movie they look like their own uncle. It's just weird. So yeah, exciting stuff. I don't know if I'd say you gotta watch this movie, but it's not gonna change your life, I don't think. Sadly. I'm sure everybody worked really hard on this, and you can see that there's some quality, and I think a lot of these actors, American actors, kind of like Harry Potter actors, everybody in England, I think, got a role in the Harry Potter films at some point, almost. This is kind of getting into the ground floor an American Harry Potter. Yeah. Also, and until I realized what was going on in the Vegas sequence of the film, I'm thinking, these are teenagers that are getting into a casino, and everybody's just handing them free stuff, and this is really strange. And I'm thinking, that's not how Vegas works. They're very particular about underage people gambling or whatever. Well, it fits in the story and eventually makes sense. So I'm overthinking and over talking about this. I spent way too much time on it. Let's pick tomorrow's episode.
464.
464. Yeah. I know. I spent way too much time in this. 464. Oh, okay. Right? 464? Let's make sure. Yep. Okay, this is a series. I think this is a outside the U.S. series, because I think its original title is in, I think, in Spanish. I'm not sure. I can't remember. And there's a number of new series and current series we haven't watched yet that are from other countries, and South America, and Mexico, and Japan, and Korea, and everything else. Well, this is one of those. And I think we're going to watch one episode, get the idea. And it's called The Chorus. Success, Here I Go. Do not ask me to say the other language version of that, because I will mess it up. So, The Chorus, Success, Here I Go, is what's next in the Disney Plus Everyday Challenge. I'll see you back here tomorrow with that.